Hey guys, this is Smithy. Welcome to my channel. If you guys are new here, welcome. Today, I'm gonna do a very chocolate inspired makeup look. Everything on my face is like a brown, chocolatey, deep, dark, sultry tones. I was craving like brown chocolatey looks on my face. So I went back to it. I did shop my stash, used all the makeup that I already had in my collection, and I came out with this look. The only new thing that I tested was Rare Beauty's primer and foundation. That's it. Rest everything on my face is chocolatey, brown tones, all things that I love. So if you guys want to see how I achieved this look, then please keep on watching. Let's begin. I'm super excited. The few things that are pretty new in my collection which I had to try, especially Rare Beauty stuff, which I have been like eyeing for such a long time. So talking about Rare Beauty, let's start off with the primer, and this is called Always the Optimist Pore Diffusing Primer. It basically looks like a silicone primer to me, especially with that like gel consistency and like that transparent base. So let's see how it applies on my skin. Guys, can you see that rash on my eye? I don't know what caused it, but it is pretty painful. And today especially, I want to do like a chocolatey look. I basically wanted not to touch the eye, but I don't think it's gonna happen, especially today. Most of the days I think of like not touching it. When I'm working or like when I'm going to work, I can just like tap off a little bit and like apply a little bronzer on the eye and I'll be set. But when I'm like doing videos, I feel like, you guys are expecting a little more. I don't know what caused it. I actually don't know. I think I did try a tiny little bit of my single shadows from Colourpop. I don't know whether that caused it or not because it's a little old. So I'm avoiding that. Hopefully putting anything else would not cause it. So let's hope for the best, fingers crossed. For the foundation, I'm going to try the Rare Beauty foundation. And this one is actually in the shade 240C. I think that would be a good match. So let's try that. Appears to be a tiny little bit of orangey shade, but I think it can work. I'll start off with a little bit because I am not sure of the consistency of this product, but heard like great things about this. Seems like a good medium coverage foundation, I would say. By the way, I do have like a sample version of it. That's why I cannot like show you the product, but I have like few shades from them. So I did want to test it out before like investing in a full-size product. But I am going with the shade 340C, which I assume is like of a cooler undertone, but because of that orange tint, doesn't seem like cool to me. I would say it would be like more of a neutral shade, and I am a lot more on the neutral side rather than on like a warm or a cool tone side. But out of the samples that I have from Rare Beauty, I think this would be the best bet for me. I think that matches pretty well, I would say. I am going to wear this for the whole day, so I can update it in the description box below for you guys that how it wore throughout the day, which hopefully it'll be all good. So that basically gave me like a good medium buildable coverage, I would say. Very lightweight on the skin. Cannot complain about that at all. Whatever is left on my brush, I'm just going to tap it on top of the eyelid just so that I can like avoid that red rash on top of especially this eye. That's where is like it's hurting a little bit, but I'm gonna apply it with a very tiny little bit of pressure so that I don't irritate a lot. So let's see how it rolls. Okay, by the way, I already did my brows using my e.l.f. brow pencil in the shade Cool Brown. Okay, now let's move on to the concealer. I'm going to use Flower Beauty concealer, and this one is in the shade, oh my god, this is so tiny, Medium Honey. Okay, so let's put that. This also has like a peachy tint to it, which combats my blueness of the dark circles. very nicely. So basically today is gonna be, apart from the Rare Beauty thing, everything is like Shop My Stash. So yeah, I'm gonna take the same brush, and this is by like Morphe and Jaclyn Hill collection. This is basically the foundation brush, which I use for almost everything, I think. Especially for my, I would say, foundation and concealer. I really like my concealer not to be like stark light on my face, and that's why I generally use my foundation brushes underneath the eyes, especially at least for this brush, I would say, because it's not like extensively like a large brush. I can definitely use this. I definitely can see a little bit of like textural issue because of that rash, which I am definitely not liking. But yeah, it's life, it's real life. So we have to deal with it. Okay, now let's move on to the powder. For the powder, I'm going to take my Charlotte Tilbury powder, Airbrush Flawless Finish powder in the shade 2, which is medium. Love this underneath the eyes, especially when you have a lot of texture. This is beautiful to just smoothen out everything. You don't need much of it, but it does the setting for you and like smoothening. I love it. I would say this is the only Charlotte Tilbury product that I have in my collection. So yeah, let me enjoy. Beautiful. Actually, let's set the whole face with the powder. I'm going to take a big fluffy brush and just dust it all across the face, just so that everything is like nice and set, and like a smooth canvas is already laid for the other products to lay on top of it. I am going with a cream blush, but I have applied the cream blush over the powder, so I'm not worried about like disturbing the foundation underneath. So once we have all that set very nicely, let's move on to the bronzer. And for the bronzer, I'm going to take my one of the favorite bronzers that I have in my collection, and that is by Makeup by Mario. And this is the Soft Sculpt bronzer. This is in the shade medium dark. A beautiful shade and tone for like medium dark skin tones. This is perfect for me. Like, I love this tone, especially when you go with like a big fluffy brush. Beautiful. I don't know why I'm like craving for like a chocolatey look. I just don't know. Like, I think it's mainly because February is just gone, and we were doing so much of like reds and pinks and purples on our eyes. I am literally craving for a chocolate look. Some warm chocolatey eyes. Everything chocolatey. I don't know why. I'm just craving. Let me be. You know, when like the seasons change and you like crave different kind of colors on your face or on the eyes. In case of me, it's generally the eyes. But as soon as that season is over, you're like back to your bronzes, your neutrals, your chocolates, you know? Yeah. Cannot help. Okay, I'm going to take the same bronzer and apply it on my nose too, just for like a subtle nose contour. And I love this brush for that. I've mentioned that in like several of my videos. I love this brush to like just cut the nose. And it does such a beautiful and a natural job. Beautiful. And this is actually from Sigma and Practique line. And this is called the shade brush. Because of the cut of this brush, I don't know whether you can see it or not. It's like a slanted brush. Beautiful, beautiful. It just like sits right on the bridge of your nose and just does the work for you. Like, beautiful it is. Like, can you see that? Ugh, love it. Love when you do not have to do a lot of work and they do the maximum amount of work for you. Story of my life. And just to diffuse that a tiny little bit, I'm going to take the same powder brush with no product on it and just dust it right on top of it. So that just smoothens it out a tiny little bit. Now, for the blush. I don't know what I'm craving. Because we're going with like that rusty, chocolatey tones, I think I want to do a little bit more of like a, you know, orangey kind of a blush. I think we should do this. I'm going to take my Patrick Ta blush, and this is in the shade Do We Know Her. It's a beautiful like an orangey coral blush. I love it. The powder is more of like more of a neutral tone. I would say it's like a orange with a little bit of like a pink mixed in it. A true coral, I would say. So I'm going to put that powder side first as a blush. And then if we are like craving for a little more pink, we can add it at the end. But right now I feel like we would be best with this. I'm gonna do the powder side first. And then I'm gonna dip into the cream side, which is more of that orangey shade. And this would just give you a little more of like a natural sheen on the face. And that's why. Generally, this is like Patrick Starr's style of wearing blush, of wearing first the powder side and then going on top with the cream. And that would just give you like a subtle glow on the cheek and gives you a very natural finish on your cheeks. Love that idea. First, I was like terrified, but now because I'm like used to using that shade like that, just love it. So now you can see like much more of like a natural finish on the face. And of course, if you want like a more of a matte finish, again, just take that powder brush, whatever was like left over on the brush, and just go over it just to diffuse the edges, just to lighten it a tiny little bit without altering the formula or the shade. Love the softness of the blush altogether, love it. Okay, now for the highlighter, I'm going to take my Jaclyn Hill highlighter in the shade Mesmerize. And this is such a beautiful shade, I would say. It's more of like a peachy, goldeny highlighter. And this is definitely not like super highlighty on the cheeks. The one that is in the shade Iced is like crazy, like super crazy. I mean, don't take me otherwise. This is also highlighty, but definitely nowhere close to Iced. And I think this one like flatters my skin tone a tiny little bit more just because I'm more on the tanner side. I love this, especially for like warm tone, chocolatey or like peachy looks. It's just beautiful. I think she does like highlighters the best. And then for the nose, I'm just gonna run it right across the nose, on the tip of the nose, and right on my cupid's bow. Okay, now let's move on to the eyes. As soon as I thought about like a chocolatey warm tone look, I really thought of like using this palette again. And this is from a Morphe Jaclyn Hill Divine Neutrals palette. Like I used to use this all the time, and then there was a galore of eyeshadow palettes and then I forgot about it. So let's use this again and just revive our thought process for this palette. So now let's start off with the shade called Just Barely, which is more of like a neutral, my skin tone shade. I generally start with this shade just because it's my skin tone shade, and I can like set the foundation, concealer, whatever I used as a base, or the eyeshadow primer. In my case, it's the foundation, whatever was left over underneath the brush. After we've like set with that powder, let's take the next shade, which is called Good Vibes from the palette. And this would be our transition shade. And this is like a beautiful mid-tone brown shade, I would say. A little bit more on like the warmer side. This palette is like a warm tone person's dream. If you are like a neutral warm tone person, something's stuck on my nose. Some hair, I think. Okay. What I was saying is like, this is definitely like a mid-tone brown shade. This definitely is like very similar to her original Jaclyn Hill palette that she launched with Morphe, the first one. If you have that first one, you definitely don't need this one. And I have actually done like a dedicated video like comparing them together when I use this palette. And almost every shade was there in that palette except this reddish tone that's there. I think that's the only thing. And this one actually, this matte cream shade, that's it. The rest everything was already there in that palette. So you definitely don't need this one if you have the first one. Or if you did not purchase the first one because there were a lot more colors and options and it was more of a bigger palette and you only needed like the neutral tones, I think you'll absolutely enjoy this. And this is like for $18, I would say. It just blends very nicely. I'm going to take the same shade and I'm going to apply that on my lower lash line. Just smoke it out underneath and just connect it to the upper lash line. Just to deepen it out a tiny little bit more, we're going to take this warm tone brown shade, which is called Booked from the palette. And this has like a tiny little bit of mustardiness also to it. Oh, such a beautiful chocolatey tone. I'm going to do a halo eye. I love halo eyes, especially for my chocolatey brown shades. I love it. So I'm going to do that. Look at that shade. It's beautiful. And then I'm going to join it right in the crease with tiny little bit of pressure. Nothing much. Remember, you have a rash, so don't apply too much pressure. And apply the same thing underneath the eyes. And now, just for the outer corners, I'm going to take this shade, the deep dark, like a neutral brown in the palette, and this is called Boo Bear. I'm going to take that, tap off the excess, and just apply it right in the outer corners, just to deepen everything out. And I'm also going to take the same shade with like a smaller defined brush in the lower lash line. You can definitely see that chocolatiness coming through, and that's exactly what we're looking for. I'm going to take that small tiny little definer brush and just run it right along the lower lash line and just connect it to the upper lash line. I don't know if you guys can see it or not. It's definitely sticking to my dry patches wherever I have that texture, but that's me. It's not the eyeshadow, because I've used this eyeshadow a lot of times. It's just sticking to my areas where I have that rash and I have that like texture. It's definitely emphasizing that. So I'm going to take the same, the first blending brush that we used and the first shade that we used, just barely my skin tone shade, just tiny little bit, and I'm just going to go over the edges just to blend everything together. And now for the inner corners, I'm going to take this shade, which is called All Luxe. It definitely looks like a very champagne-y pinky shade. I'm going to apply that in my inner corners, just because there's no other lighter shade in the palette, even though it's like a little more on the pink leaning, but on the inner corners, because it's like a tiny little place, it doesn't show that much of like pinkiness coming through it. And then I'm going to apply the same thing underneath my brow bone, just to emphasize that brow bone a tiny little bit. I think we'll need a little bit of the eyeshadow primer just because I have texture on the eyes. So I am going to take my Wet n Wild eyeshadow primer, this one, very, very tiny little bit. And I'm going to take that right in the center, just so that I have like a sticky base for the eyeshadow to stick on, just like that. Nothing much, just a tiny little bit. Now the question lies, what should I use for the lids? Do I use anything like with this like bronzy rusty tones on the eyes? Or I actually do have like two single shadows that I would like to use. One is from Dasha Denona, and this is in the shade Sense, which is basically from like the Zendo palette. And this would be, it'll just turn out to be like a smoky eye, but this is more of, I would say, see, look at that, like the rusty tone. And I'm pretty sure I can find this tone in the Jaclyn Hill palette too. Or I do have like a ColourPop single shadow, but again, this one, I don't think you can find it because this is like a Super Shock shadow. I think it's discontinued. And this one is in the shade Mooning, But I love this eyeshadow for like chocolatey looks. Let me swatch it for you guys. Look at that. Look at that. I think I should apply this one as a base and then take something from that Jaclyn Hill palette on top. Look at that. I love it. Love it. Like for smoky eyes, I don't know if you guys can see it or not. This has so much of like dimension in this eyeshadow. Like you can find like copper and gold and so many particles in it that like shifts and shines whenever you are like in light. It's beautiful for a smoky eye. Like, cannot recommend enough. I don't know why did they discontinue it, but it is the story of Colourpop. Like, I like something and I want to recommend something and it's gone. So, yeah. If you have mooning, you know it. Look at that. So beautiful. I actually do not even want to apply anything else. It's just so pretty. Like all over the eyelids. Are you kidding me? Obviously, the work that we did for the halo eye is gone because we just applied it everywhere, but I'm not mad at it. So, line my eyes with a chocolatey brown eyeliner, and this is from Essence. This is the Essence Extreme Lasting Eye Pencil in the shade But First Espresso. It's just beautiful. I love these pencils. Let's finish off with our lips and then figure out whether we need anything more or not, okay? Because I'm actually confused. So, okay, let's take Nude 2.5 as usual from KKW Beauty. Are they coming back? I don't know. Okay, let's line our lips. And now, I'm just going to fade out a tiny little bit with my fingers. And then a perfect lipstick to go with it would be from Milani. And this is the Milani's Matte Fetish lipstick in the shade Desire. Love this lipstick. This is the lipstick that actually inspired me to get this look all created. Love it. What I decided is, let's go with this shade, which is called Striptease from the palette. And let's apply that right in the center. Not that it'll give a lot more dimension, but at least some, I would say. It'll just give a little bit of more of a coppery shift, which would go beautiful with that lipstick. You absolutely do not need it. But if you do not have mooning, I think that would be great as an option. Okay, now I'm just going to line my eyes with some liner and mascara. For the liner, I'm going to take my Anastasia Beverly Hills liquid liner. And for mascara, as usual, I'm going to take my L'Oreal Lash Paradise mascara. I'm going to finish off my eyes and I'll get right back. And now let's finish off the complete look by setting our face. And this is e.l.f. setting spray. And that's my final chocolate inspired look. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I loved, oh my god, I cannot tell you how happy I am by putting this makeup on my face, especially these chocolatey tones that I was like craving for. I love the way how it all turned out. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did like it, do give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I love doing shop my stash kind of videos where I can like use my existing makeup and put it on my face and like make myself realize that I don't need any more makeup. In my life actually. So if you did like this video, do give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell so that you're notified every time that I post next. I generally upload 3 videos every single week, every Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays at 9 AM Eastern Standard Time. Until next time, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.